Good evening. My name's Erik Braa, and tonight we travel to the Arctic Circle aboard one of the most beautiful and remote railway journeys in all of Europe. Written by Andrew Martin, our story takes place along the tracks of the Nordland Railway as we travel through breathtaking scenery found only on the coast of Norway. So relax, get comfortable, and we'll start our story. Your journey begins at Trondheim. As the sun begins to set, you take in the scenery, mesmerized by the town's beautiful architecture. Trondheim has an old Gothic cathedral whose stone interior is illuminated by hundreds of candles. But perhaps the most distinctive buildings are a series of old timber warehouses lining the River Neat. These buildings, usually converted to cozy, firelit restaurants and pubs, are painted either rich brown, red, green, or sunflower yellow, as are their own reflections in the river. And Trondheim is a rather watery place. Along with the river, there is a relaxing canal running through town, but perhaps the most notable water source is the great expanse of the Trondheim Fjord, into which a good deal of rain falls throughout the year. The night before your journey, you look down from the restaurant of your comfortable hotel in Trondheim, watching the marshalling of a goods train near Trondheim railway station. At regular intervals along the track, electric lights twinkle red and yellow in the mist made by the falling rain. The gentle rain still falls as you approach the station early on the following morning. The streets are peaceful and quiet, the traffic lights changing for no apparent reason, as no one awaits them at this hour. As you approach the station, which is adjacent to the river, you hear the friendly foghorn of a ship crossing the fjord. Trondheim railway station is known for being an elegant classical building. It is a relief to enter the warm and bright booking hall. In the station shop, Norwegian commuters are buying newspapers, tea and pastries, and most will be taking local trains, not the Nordland line. The place seems a home away from home for some of them, and they call cheerful greetings to one another as they come through the main doors, shaking the water off their umbrellas. The Nordland train is waiting, a smart red diesel locomotive and 6 red carriages, all very well designed and arranged. You take your seat, which is most accommodating, with a tall back and plenty of legroom. Completely content, there is no impulse to try and exchange it for another. A generously sized table is before you, and to the side, a window. A Wi-Fi connection is available, and while you are sure it works beautifully, as most things on Norwegian railways do, you have no desire to turn on any devices today. Instead, you plan to fully immerse yourself in the journey. Norway does not have many railways. A landscape of mountains, forests, and rivers mostly prevent the building of them. But that same landscape has ensured the lines that are built are truly beautiful. As you pull away from Trondheim station, the rain begins rhythmically falling against the window glass, giving the effect of a black and white film to the sleepy suburbs of Trondheim. They seem old-fashioned, pleasingly reminiscent of the 1950s. You glimpse a man in a rain cape riding a bike with a basket on the front, and a woman pushing a big stroller, holding a large black umbrella over herself and baby. You sit back and relax. You are in first class, known as comfort class, and it is comfortable, which is just as well, because your train will be covering over 450 miles, stopping 27 times and passing through more stations than it stops at. Soon you are out of town, moving through gently undulating fields. The grass is lush and amazingly green. All that rain is the cause, you suppose. Clouds move like smoke in the steely skies above. There are cattle and sheep, yet no people in view, even though the train runs close to farmhouses, sometimes broaching the picket fence boundaries of actual farmyards. These houses are chalet-like, made partly of wood, usually maroon or yellow in color, and always beautifully kept, with a Norwegian flag flying from the roof or a nearby flagpole. There are some tokens of habitation, however, like a drift of smoke from a chimney and the warm glow of illuminated windows. Over on the other side of the tracks, the rain is passing by the open sea, or what looks like the open sea, with a couple of giant black oil tankers moving slowly across the horizon. But this is the Trondheim fjord, as a woman sitting on the opposite side of the carriage proudly informs you. Sometimes the train seems to descend almost onto the shingle beach, which is lapped by gentle waves. From time to time, you see small upturned boats on the beach, waiting for smoother waters. Even after the train has stopped half a dozen times, the fjord remains your companion. At last, you see an actual person on that side. He's rowing a small boat, wearing a bulky waterproof coat and a large, shapeless sou'wester hat. As the train passes by, he stops rowing and waves. You can't see his face, but you are perfectly confident that he is smiling. You have found the Norwegians to be extremely friendly and very well organized. For example, the automatic onboard announcements broadcast in carriages are minimal and softly muttered, first in Norwegian, then in English. In a few minutes, we will be arriving at, and then the name of the station is given, followed always by its height above sea level, which you do find a slightly puzzling addition, but charming, indicating a strong connection to nature, of which there is a great deal in northern Norway. The stations, like the farmhouses, are usually pretty buildings made of wood. There is always a clock on the outside, and often a well-kept garden nearby. You like to imagine the waiting rooms, with wooden floors, landscape paintings on the walls, a clock patiently ticking. Every so often, the cheerful station master enters to throw more logs into the warm iron stove. Sometimes bikes are stacked against the side walls of the stations, and they appear to be unlocked. You have been told that it is not necessary to lock a bike or a door in the countryside of Norway. At the average station stop, 2 people get off and 2 people get on. Those boarding tend to be soaked, but they look happy enough, and it appears to be the custom on Norwegian trains to nod to your fellow passengers as you walk along the aisle of a carriage towards your seat. Glancing out the window, you again marvel at the train's proximity to the rolling, silvery waves and the empty beaches. The friendly Norwegian woman on the opposite aisle, who has been listening to music on headphones, removes them as classical music seeps out and leans over. "Still Trondheim Fjord," she says, smiling. "It will be with us for another 30 miles, and the train has already covered 70. Before going back to her music, the woman introduces herself as Anna. There are newspapers, including some English ones, in the carriage, and a tea and beverage making machine. For a while, you read and sip tea. Then a great stone gorge appears amid the trees on the landward side. Anna removes her headphones again. "Namsen River," she explains, inviting you to look through the window on her side. And you do so, and craning, you can just make out rushing white water at the base of the gorge. You ask if she will be going all the way to Bodo, and she nods gravely. "All the way. My bicycle is in the baggage car, and I will be touring the Bodo district, as I do every year." You're glad Anna is going the entire way to Bodo, because she is the ideal traveling companion, helpful and kind, yet respectful and quiet. The rolling green meadows have now given way to more dramatic, rockier scenery, and you have finally left the fjord behind, although others will be appearing shortly. Anna pulls out a green Perspex lunchbox and begins eating her well-organized lunch. Noticing your interest, she invites you to share her food. You thank her but politely decline, saying you'd like to take a look at the dining car. As you walk along the train, you pass through one carriage that has a sort of playpen for children. There is a climbing frame and scattered toys. 3 children sit cross-legged in front of a large TV that is showing cartoons, silently, of course. In spite of the beauty of the landscape, most of the passengers in the next 2 carriages are asleep, lulled by the motion of the train and the relaxing rain thrumming against the windows. The restaurant car is impeccable, ultra clean and very modern, but reminiscent of a 50s diner, with white tables and red leather banquet seats. The only other customers are a middle-aged couple. They both nod at you, and seeing that you are looking with interest at the stew they are eating, the woman explains, "Lapskos, it's a stew. I promise you'll like it." Taking her word for it, you order a plateful for yourself, and indeed find it quite delicious. As you eat your lunch, followed by a calming cup of tea, the train makes a couple of stops. You are now in deep countryside, and the stations are just halts, small platforms with perhaps a tiny hut for shelter from the weather. The people alighting at these stops are equipped with full sets of waterproof and high-tech rucksacks. One man walks directly from the halt into the adjoining forest of pine trees. You return to your carriage and your seat. The forested rocky hills have now become snow-capped mountains, where there are proper station buildings. They are now plainer and more functional, sometimes of brick. While the northern part of the Nordland Railway was originally constructed for the purposes of defending the Norwegian coast, it is very hard to believe that this railway was built for any other reason than to give enjoyment to its passengers. There is a beautiful melancholy about this route, the absence of people, the vertiginous gorges, the great birds, some of them white-tailed eagles you will later discover, bravely soaring in the falling rain. The train pulls into the station at the small industrial town of Mo i Rana, known formally as Mo. It stands on the shores of another fjord, the Ranfjord, whose wide black waters are being contemplated by a giant statue of a human figure. The work, by Anthony Gormley, is known as a Havaman, or man from the sea, as the train pulls away from the station. A real person walking a dog on the edge of a pine forest turns and waves. Aside from at the stations, you have so far seen about 6 people from the train, and 3 of them have waved. The train progresses more slowly now, as it begins to climb the terrain. The rain has finally stopped. The landscape is monochrome, a moonscape of gray rock and snow. Anna is looking over at you, poised to answer your question. Where are we, you ask? North, she says with a smile. Very far north. There comes another announcement, a live one this time, but just as mellow and measured as the recorded ones. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to cross the Arctic Circle. On either side of the track, pyramids formed of loose stones mark the spot. The sky is a very dark blue, and you spot another eagle turning gracefully beneath the clouds above. Anna closes her eyes, clearly content. Everything, in a way, is just as it ought to be. At the town of Falsk, most of the people remaining on the train disembark. Walls of rock are set into the hills beyond the station. Anna leans over again. Quarrying town, she says. Gradually, as the train approaches the terminus, the landscape flattens. Trees begin to reappear. The train rolls into the town of Bodo, where both it and the Norwegian railway network come to a stop. There are a couple of 100 miles of Norway beyond Bodo, but the landscape is not suitable for trains. In 1852, Lady Wilde, the mother of Oscar Wilde, visited Norway on her honeymoon. She wrote in her diary that, owing to the nature of this country, railways can never be universal, and this is fortunate, as Norway must remain sacred to nature, and the picturesque, and the poet. You spend a pleasant night and day in Bodo, a quiet town of gray stone, surrounded by fjords, lakes, mountains, and mountainous islands. Almost every corner you turn brings you to a quayside and moored ship. You have many options in this place. You can take in the refreshing sea air as you admire the far-off mountains, or you can sit reading or daydreaming in cafes as the mountains appear to exchange identity with rain clouds as gentle sheets of rain roll down the fogged windows. 24 hours after your arrival, you are back at Bodo Station, preparing to board the Nordland Night Train, a sleeper service for the journey back to Trondheim. A dozen passengers sit on the plain wooden benches of the waiting room, most with a dripping umbrella propped nearby. The train is being readied on the nearby platform. After a few minutes, the train guard, a pleasant-looking, smiling woman, calls you towards it. Rain drips from the canopy of the platform as you step aboard. The corridor of your sleeper carriage is lit by a gentle yellow light. The train guard equips you with a key card to open the door of your compartment. When you travel by yourself on our night trains, the guard adds, you get a compartment all to yourself, and so you feel a strong sense of ownership as you step inside into your own private den. The compartment is lit by a softer glow still than the corridor, as though by a nightlight or candlelight. It appears to you that in terms of coziness, your quarters compare with those in the luxurious blue and gold sleeper carriages of the Wagenslitz company that once traversed Europe with their cargoes of slumbering humans, usually fairly wealthy ones who appreciated the decorative inlays of the wood panels and ornate lalique glass. There is a dainty little sink in the corner, a fluffy towel hanging from the rack below. There are some little notices by the pillow of the lower bunk, elegant and to the point. Please use the bottled water. A panel of light switches read lights with the subheadings assistance, reading, and sealing. But you are happy with the gentle glow you discovered on entering. Even though you will be the sole occupant, both bunks are made up. Each is covered with a duvet of cozy pressed linen, and so here are two snowdrifts, upper and lower. You take off your shoes. Some childish urge prompts you to climb the ladder with carpeted rungs that leads to the top bunk, where you discover a plumped-up pillow with a chocolate on it. You decide this will be your bed for the evening. Meanwhile, you sit on the bottom bunk to watch the departure from Bodo. In the peaceful outskirts of the town, the trains give a lonely sounding whistle as though saying goodbye. Although not a single citizen of Bodo appears to have observed the departure, a quiet announcement comes over the tannoy. Welcome to our train. It will bring you to Trondheim. The cafe will be open all night. You have already eaten, but you decided you would like a drink of hot chocolate before going to bed. You put on the soft white slippers provided in the compartment and walk along the carpeted corridor. All the compartment doors that you pass are closed. It seems all your fellow passengers have already turned in for the night. As you arrive at the dining car, its only occupants are the woman serving at the counter and the train guard. As your hot chocolate is being prepared, you ask the guard if she will be announcing the crossing of the Arctic Circle. Never on the night train, she says, smiling as everyone's asleep. Sitting down at a table with your drink, you gaze out the dim window. It seems that if the train passes a road, there will be no more than one car running along it. If it passes a house, a single window might be illuminated. At the stations, there is never more than a single person waiting, if anyone. It seems at this point, there's no real purpose to the stops other than to give the train a brief rest. After a while, there are no more farmhouses, or at least no visible ones, because by now, all the lights are switched off. As the train approaches the Arctic Circle, the snow glows in the moonlight. The train guard has left the dining car, and the woman at the counter is sitting on a chair, reading a book, or possibly dozing. Walking back along the empty corridor, you notice a faint snore from behind one of the neighboring doors. Back in your warmly glowing compartment, you begin to get ready for bed. The blind is still up, and you sit for a moment in your pajamas, watching as the landscape continues to unroll. As you peer out the window, you can see the silhouettes of peaceful pine trees in the distance, comforted and surrounded by the calming wilderness. You have the sense of being the last person awake in the whole of Norway. Well, no, you think, climbing under the soft white duvet. There must be at least one other, the man or woman driving the Nordland Night Train. In that moment, you're filled with immense gratitude for the sights and experiences of this breathtaking journey. As you lean forward and finally lower the window blind, you gently lie back and switch off the light, listening for a while to the soothing rhythm of the Nordland sleeper. But after only a couple of minutes, you drift off into a deep, deep, peaceful night's sleep.